It's also good to be here at Georgetown. Now, for the newer people who've only seen pictures of the old Georgetown Law School, the old red stone building, that's where I went. We used to tie our horses up in front. But it was a good time, and what we did then at the time, and I remember being in an honors group where we were lectured by, among others, Edward Bennett Williams. And he asked us if we all had our books. We very eager youngsters, yes we do. Do you have all your notepads? Oh yes we do. He said, okay, throw those away and just listen to what I'm going to tell you. And we learned a great deal. We also learned a respect for the rule of law in a free society. Georgetown still teaches and will always teach, and I believe so strongly in that. The Law Center is hosting this 21st Annual Computers, Freedom and Privacy Conference. Leahy, the conference chair, has invited me, and I appreciate that. But I was also glad to see a number of tech leaders and policy makers and public interest folks who are here, and that is important. I mean, the kind of things we're discussing today, when I was in law school, there's no way we would have even had the foggiest idea of the change that might be made. Actually, maybe a dozen years ago, we might not have. But I do think of what, in 1963, Chief Justice Earl Warren said, the fantastic advances in the field of electronic communications constitute a greater danger to the privacy of the individual. Now that was in 1963. Prescient, when you stop to think about it. His words about the threats to our digital privacy are just as true today. We do witness truly fantastic advances in technology that makes the internet more open and free than ever before. But with the explosion of new technology, social networking sites, smartphones, mobile applications, we also have threats to our privacy. And that's one thing that every one of us as Americans should worry about. In the past month, we learned that smartphones and mobile applications may be collecting and using and storing our location information, as well as a range of other sensitive information. And I'm concerned about this. We found, I'm not the only one, a recent survey commissioned by the privacy firm Trustee found 38% of American smartphone users surveyed identified privacy as their number one concern when using the device. I mean, you'd think it'd be drop phone calls, you'd think it'd be something like that. It was privacy. And so then we take this seriously in our state of Vermont. Some of you have heard the story of the article profile once done about in one of our major newspapers, and it's actually not the only thing I've ever taken from the paper and saved and framed up. And to put this in perspective, you have to understand, I live on a dirt road, an old farmhouse in Middlesex, Vermont. Hundreds of acres of land, and there's joining farm family that's known me since I was in high school. And they hay our fields and so on. But it all goes like this. Saturday morning, reporter out of state car. Sees the old farmer sitting on the porch, and he says, does Senator Leahy live up this road? Farmer responds, you a relative of his? He said, well, no, I'm not. Are you a friend of his? Well, not really. He expecting you? No. Never heard of him. So, in Vermont, privacy, you come by it naturally. But this guy didn't realize I've always had listed a home phone number. He didn't think to actually look for it. But recently, Google announced that the Gmail accounts of hundreds of its users, including some very senior U.S. government officials, have been hacked in an apparent state-sponsored attack. In the last few weeks, we've witnessed major data breaches at Sony, Epsilon, RSA, IMF, Lockheed Martin, just to name a few. We've had attacks even into the Senate sites in the last week or so. So if we're going to have a successful course in the future, we can't ignore these threats or their impact on society. There's so much good in the way we can communicate digitally in medicine, education, and everything else. But we should not think that we should do it and give up our own privacy. As the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, I've been looking at this. I've been trying to figure out what's the best way we can protect our privacy rights. And one conclusion I've drawn is we must modernize the legal framework for safeguarding privacy in the digital age. We have a legal framework for an analog age, and we got to start thinking about a digital age. And we're working to update the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, or ECPA, so this key privacy law keeps pace with our technologies. Last month, I introduced Electronic Communications Privacy Act amendments of 2011. That would make the first comprehensive changes to ECPA in 25 years. When I first wrote that bill in '86, nobody could have anticipated. We tried to, but nobody could have anticipated the enormous changes in technology. Email was a novelty then. Cell phones were as big as a shoebox. Any of you old enough to remember the cell phone? I mean, it really was the size of a shoebox. And of course, mobile apps, nobody knew what that meant. But many of the assumptions we made about new technology and how it would be made, assumptions we made 20 years ago, no longer valid. Today, most Americans use email and other modes of electronic communications as their primary form of communication. They often store these communications on laptops or electronic communications devices or in the cloud. The bill I introduced would strengthen the privacy protection of email and other electronic communications by requiring the government must obtain a search warrant based on probable cause to gain access to the content of electronic communications. When I was a prosecutor, if I wanted to go into your house, search your records, see what you're doing, I needed a search warrant. I question whether it should be that much different if I'm going to search all your files, but I'm going to do it from 1,000 miles away with keystrokes. They give consumers new privacy protection for their location information, require the government either obtain a search warrant or a court order under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act to get the location information stored on a device. It required the government obtain a search warrant before it could track people in real time by obtaining location information from a service provider. Now, updating ECPA is not going to be easy. There are many interests, including important needs of the law enforcement community, which we have to balance. But when we've seen some of the things that have happened in the past year, I would argue whether people are coming at it from the right or the left, they have to accept the fact it needs updating. If you reform this outdated privacy law, and we'll keep pace with changing technologies. Conversely, if we don't, we don't. So I need your help. The explosion of new technology also means our information is more vulnerable to cybercrime and other threats. According to the Privacy Rights Clearinghouse, since 2005, you know how many records have been involved in data security breaches? 533 million. When I was in Moscow a couple weeks ago, and I did speak to a number of people there about their state-sponsored or quasi-state-sponsored hacking. In my home state of Vermont, Norwich University Center for Counterterrorism and Cybercrime is doing innovative work to help counter the threats to our nation's cyber network. I'm also working with others in Congress, both parties, the Obama administration, develop a comprehensive national strategy. Last week I introduced the Personal Data Privacy and Security Act, comprehensive data privacy bill, establish a national standard for data breach notification. One of the very worst of things, sometimes there's been a breach, the company knows it's been breached, your information has been breached, and you're not notified. this will require a safeguard of our sensitive personal information so data breaches don't occur in the first place. I've introduced this bill 4 times. Each time I've done so, there's been a threat to data privacy, and each time I've done so, the threat has been greater. So I'm hoping the 4th time's a charm. Many of the principles have been embraced by the President and his administration, their cybersecurity proposals. And Senators Schumer and Cardin and Franken, who chairs a new subcommittee on privacy, technology, and the law, which I created earlier this year, co-sponsored it. The past has been a bipartisan effort. I hope it will be. Next week we're going to hold our first hearing on the administration's cybersecurity proposal. I'll work with them on that. But I'm not going to say that any administration, Republican or Democratic, gets a pass. We have to have the best legislation possible. We have to respect our privacy rights, our civil liberties, balance our obvious law enforcement needs, and we'll do it. So anyway, I give you a lot of different thoughts. I spoke down at the Newseum, and I must say, in January, sponsored by Georgetown, about this. Let's not shrink from taking on the fight. We can uphold our fundamental freedoms. We are different as a nation. We do have freedom, and we should not give them up. We always want America to be free, and we want our government not to intrude into our private lives. President Kennedy once said that change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future. Well, we all in this room have a vital stake in ensuring these innovative changes in technology do not diminish our rights and freedom. So these discussions, Mark, that you're having here are extremely important. And of course the future is now. And of course now is the time to bring our privacy laws fully into the digital age. If we don't do it now, what is the next generation going to do as we have even more changes even with some of the brightest minds in this room we might not be able to foresee. So thank you for having me. They probably explained that we are going to have votes in a few minutes, but you know, darndest things, they interfere with your chance to do things. But I do have a couple of minutes, and thank you very, very much.